Unmute. Okay. Thanks for hanging. I'm gonna share this on Twitter. Um, yeah, I just got my hair colored, so like I look like Eddie Munster or whatever they used to call Dominic rudely. Yes, I just got my hair colored, and yes, I'm a 50-year-old man who colors his hair jet black. I do it because I like it. Not most people tell me I should do something different, but I don't care what they say. So yeah, super interesting, at least for me. Um, I was noticing yesterday, made a tweet. So many people were so interested in it. There's still people arguing about it on my Instagram, and I think it's interesting. I think it's an interesting topic. PFL, UFC, bring in Bellator one championship. People are very interested in this kind of stuff. My role, what I tend to do, what I tend to, my expertise, if you can say that, from where I've spent my time studying things and learning things and trying to bring useful value, um, is more about fighting. But so why does this even make any sense that I would be interested? And the answer is because there's a strategy element. That's the part I'm interested in. I don't care how many people sell how many pay-per-views. I want fighters to make more money, but that's not all that much of a really deep, meaningfully interesting topic to me. Um, what I am interested in is strategy, and the strategy of business actually is very, very similar. Strategy. The strategy of how you approach a fight, the strategy of how you approach an opponent, the strategy of how you approach an assignment or tactic or something you got to deal with is actually quite similar in fighting as it is in business and in different relationships and in all types of things. Strategy carries over. I do not have massive expertise in business. I've had to study business to understand how my own business works within it when I was considering working in Singapore for one, and when I was doing a lot of work for DAZN. These were startup companies. I'm like, okay, I have to understand how these companies work as they relate to mine. So I did whatever study I could do, but I'm not a business expert. But I am somebody who's dedicated a lot of time to analyzing strategy. So I want to bring in a few thoughts here. So it says PFL versus UFC. Not a very good title for my thoughts today. Just the easiest to put up. Um, I made a tweet yesterday, or something I shared that people really just seemed so interested in and responded to a lot, which are how people respond to stuff is a big part of modern business. There's something here. It was like tonight, this was yesterday, PFL will pay five fighters $1 million each. And last night, which was the night before, UFC signed five fighters to $10,000 contracts when they won on Dana White Contender Series. It's a time of change. Those two things are terrible. The only comparison there is tonight this happened and last night this happened. But clearly those two things are very different. But they do reflect change, quite a bit of change. Um, there was no such thing as Contender Series, I guess, 4 years ago. And I don't know, PFL didn't really exist. It was other companies before that. But what I thought was really interesting was people started to ask me questions. Uh, One was like, how could, how and why could somebody pay $1 million to six fighters when you're a smaller show with much less things? And the fact that they were asking that question really made me realize, okay, this is where my interest lies, and it becomes in strategy, right? Strategy. There is a strategy in how you fight. You will develop a strategy for how to learn, strategy for how to train, strategy for business. Oh, yes, this is a cool shirt that was sent to me. Next time I wear it, I will take the people's name and share them with you. I should have done that because it was kind of them to give me this shirt. Strategy. So let's say for a moment. So the question that was being asked is, a friend of mine was like, how can these guys pay six fighters $1 million every year? That does, it's so expensive. Like, how does that work? And I realized, okay, that's actually a really phenomenal question because that brings you to the root. What is the strategy? To understand this, and I have no opinion on if this is a good strategy or a bad strategy. I do not have the expertise to analyze where this strategy could go, who it will work for, why it might work. These are not my areas of expertise. But to identify strategy, these are areas that I have developed some expertise in over the years through the study of martial arts, competitive training in martial arts, studying it, and analyzing fighting and so forth. This is an area I can speak to. I make that distinction. It's very important because a lot of the time we talk about shit that we don't know nothing about. I cannot tell you if the strategy of how the PFL runs their business or Bellator or the UFC. UFC is clearly a very successful business, but what their I could identify potential strategies here, but I cannot tell you, will this work? Will this not work? Why? Because as somebody who's not deep in business, I'm missing the nuance, which is why I often say you can say you analyze fighting, but if you do not fight, you're missing 90% of the relevant information that's only available within the experience. So I do not run either a $1 billion business. I run a very tiny business, my own business, a very small business. I do not run a 80 employee business like the PFL. I don't know how many they have. Let's say it's 80. Do not run an 800 employee business like a $1 billion company. So I'm missing a lot of stuff. But let's look at the strategy. So let's say you wanted to get involved. You wanted to take a piece of Airbnb. Now, Airbnb took a very big piece of the hotel business. How'd that happen? People looked and said, the hotel business is a $20 billion business, $50 billion business, whatever it is. How can we take a piece of it? Well, what if we could create a scenario in which people rented out this room in their home? They would do that. We would take a piece of it. If we created a new type of business, we could take that, right? That would happen. That did happen. Of course, lockdowns created a big problem for a company like Airbnb. But if you're just joining us, I'm talking about business strategy as informed through my decades of studying combat strategy. So, but if you wanted to take a piece of Airbnb's business, you'd look and go, they have $1 billion business. They already were first to market. They have the most influence on the market. This is very successful. If we could take 10% of it or 20% of it, that's a lot of money. Let's say we believe we could get $200 million worth of their business. Well, are we willing to spend 80 million to try to do that? The answer might be yes. So let's say you either love combat sports and really want to be in the sports business, or you're just a business person or some combination of them, and you say the UFC is $1 billion business. It's very close to a monopoly. Whether it's legally one or not is not super relevant for the sake of this discussion. It's $1 billion business. I'm on it right now. I'm not actually talking about PFL versus UFC pay as much as I'm talking about the strategy of, if you ran the PFL, what would you be doing and why does it look this way? So you decide you want to compete and take 10, 15, 20% of this $1 billion. I don't know if that's the accurate term. It's a $4 billion company. It was sold for, let's say they do $1 billion worth a year. I don't know what it is. Doesn't matter for the sake of this discussion. You want to take a large chunk of that. But they have 70% of all the best fighters in the world. They have, thanks, Tate. They have 70% of all the best fighters in the world. They have first to market. They have a brand that they've built. They've literally associated like Kleenex and tissue. How on earth could you, and if you were starting the PFL tomorrow or some other company, how on earth could you ever compete? Well, the business is so big that if you could find capital investment money, that's the story behind one. Sequoia Capital is a very smart company. They're not stupid. They don't do crazy stuff. They invested in one because they believe it's worth the investment. And by the way, if you're also just joining me, I got my hair dyed. If you're like, why does that 50-year-old man look so weird? It's just what I like. And I do it despite the fact that people tell me to do something different. Don't care. I've repeated that once already, but it makes me feel good to realize I do things because I want to, not because somebody tells me I should. Something about that I like. And that may relate to something we're going to talk about in just a minute. So you've decided you want to compete. You want to take a piece of a Airbnb business or the running shoe business or the fighting business. And right now it is very, very central. What do you do? Well, what if we come up, first thing you do is you look at, is there any weaknesses in this large country, corporation, whatever we are trying to invade and take some territory of? What are their weaknesses? And one of the very few weaknesses, the powerful UFC, very powerful company, very successful company. One of their weaknesses currently is fighter pay. And I say that not as an opinion or a judgment, but as an outsider view. They have lawsuits that are central, like class action lawsuits centered around fighter pay and certain behaviors. They have Jake Paul and other very popular people currently attacking fighter pay publicly. They have some percentage of the audience, not all of them, because there's a lot of the audience who's like, this is bullshit, man. Dana's got his shit together. Like, you don't understand. But there is a large portion of the audience saying this is bullshit. You've got fighters that are going on the internet saying, man, I had to do a GoFundMe because I can't pay my shit. And champions saying, I'm not being paid enough. So whether you agree or I agree on whether fighter pay is good or bad or what it is, what we can agree on is there's a lot of shit around it right now. Again, audience, fighters themselves, competitors, Jake Paul's of the world, public discourse, lawsuits, lots of stuff around that. So we and you now have decided you want to try to take a piece of this business. That's what you and your people have decided. You go to capital investment people and you say, we have a strategy. Here's our strategy. We think there's a weakness in fighter pay, both as an audience opinion, public opinion, etc., and more importantly for the fighters. So if we can have a roster of 70 fighters and 6 of them become millionaires every year, and we don't even, and we'll find the best we can. We'll pay Anthony Pettis $1.5 million a fight, which they do. He doesn't need to win $1 million. Anthony Pettis is a millionaire. 2 fights this year. I think he made $3 million. Don't know that for sure, but that's the word that is not being disputed by people around his area. Rory McDonald makes maybe $800,000 a fight. Kayla Harrison makes $500,000 to $1 million a fight and has won twice. Now you got 6, 8, 10, 12, 15 millionaires out of 60 or 80 fighters. Why? But to accomplish this, first of all, that's our strategy. We'll talk about why that might be our strategy in a minute. But we are all deciding we are going to attempt to take a piece of a very large, powerful, super successful, strong business where one corporation owns 90% of all the business, and they do. Maybe more. Maybe it's 87, maybe it's 93. I don't know. They own it all. We need to take part of it. So we have a strategy that there's a weakness that they have, public, legal, audience, fighters themselves, whatever. There's a weakness, current public weakness around fighter pay. Let's make 8 or 10 millionaires out of 70 roster. They have 700 to equal that. They would need to make 100 millionaires, right? They don't do that. So we can say, hey, you get paid more over here. Why would we do that? So first, we're going to need a lot of money, because if we're going to pay $6 million a year, and we're not really all that big yet. Look at somebody. I was like, hey, man, fuck you. I do my hair what I want. And see, 1 out of 100 people are like, I like it. Thank you. So we've decided we're going to give away $6 million a year to and make 6 or 8 other millionaires. So maybe we got 10 millionaires that we're going to make out of 60 or 80 fighters. We're going to say, hey, money's better over here. Why would we do that? Why is this even a logical strategy? Here's one reason. Because we must try to get some of the best talent, or else we're not going to exist at all, right? So again, we are the PFL or some other company. This same thing applies if you want to be in the beef jerky business or any other business. If there's somebody, a very large business that someone owns 90% of the business, we're going to try to take some of it. How could we compete? Well, they're under the public, and the talent believes they're underpaid. We'll pay you. Well, you're going to lose a lot of money doing that. Yeah, but if we do it long enough, if we make 10 or 20 millionaires out of 100 people over a 2, 3, 4 year period, we'll get more people. Some of the better, bigger name fighters will fight out their contract, and then they'll come over here. That's the strategy, right? Now, and maybe some of the audience will be like, see, these guys are paying. Hey, you heard about this shit Jake Paul's talking about fighter pay. These guys have just made 8 millionaires in the last year. Anthony Pettis, 6 winners, Ray Cooper. So that would be the strategy that and again, I am an expert in martial arts, combat sports, not even combat sports. I'm not an expert in combat sports. I'm a martial arts analyst, dedicate my life to studying martial arts. Strategy is a part of it, understanding how and why we move these things with an attempt, with a goal. This is a part of my learning. How these businesses, the details of this business, not. I would never claim to be a business analyst because I watch Shark Tank. Which is why every now and again I'm like, there are people who say they're martial arts analysts, but they don't do martial arts. I think that's crazy. I can't claim to be that, right? That goes against my belief systems. But I can tell you that I can talk about strategy. So the strategy here is if we can take some meaningful amount of the talent, and then we can take a meaningful amount slowly of public opinion and switch so it all, maybe even though we're losing 8 million, 10 million, 5 million, 2 million, 11 million a year, whatever it is. Again, this is not what this is about. It's about strategy. It's about tactics. It's about an approach, a philosophical approach. If that works, although we would go from losing this much, next year we'd lose less, and pretty soon we'd start to make money. Maybe we'd actually get 10% of this very large pie by doing this. So that would be their approach. Now, if you were the UFC or the biggest beef jerky company or Nike or whomever is something in this situation, doesn't need to be about fighting. You can even discuss this about military tactics and how people move and take territory. It's the same idea. We're trying to take territory here. So you're the other guys. You are now the UFC. So if you are the UFC, you have to say, you can do one of two things. We got a weakness in fighter pay. Why don't we just pay more and just put an end to that? That's not a good approach, because by having 84% or 81% of the pie, you can run your business a particular way. So your business structure as it exists this way. If you say, well, we're going to give out 40% of the money, you now have to lay off 150 people who do all types of different things, book travel, and things. You can do it. This company could 100% exist giving the fighters 50%, but it would be run different. It would be managed different. Its budgets would be different. It would work differently, and they would make less money. So we don't want to do that, right? We don't want to do that. So we've got these people coming along and attacking us in our area of weakness, which currently is the opinion around and the execution of fighter pay. So how can we stop them? We don't want to just fold. How can we stop them? And the main way to stop them, if you are now let's imagine we own the big piece. Again, this doesn't have to be PFL in the UFC. This can be any Kleenex, Band-Aids, right? Band-Aid owns the largest, I assume, again, this is not my area of expertise. I'm using it as a way to illustrate a point around the concept of strategy of taking territory, mind share, attention, whatever, it's all the same. If Band-Aid has 80% of the bandage business and the name Band-Aid, we say, oh, my kid got hurt, let's get her a Band-Aid, right? So, or, hey, I want to fight UFC. Like it's a similar thing. At one point, at least, Band-Aid was positioned this way. If Band-Aid somehow was using some tactics to make more money that a competitor went to compete with, tried to exploit, tried to use to compete with them, they could change that thing, or they could control the message. And this is something that the UFC can do to protect their business share without having to pay more. They don't want to pay these fighters more. And I would say I don't blame them, but the bias, my opinion, what I think makes me go, fuck, they should just pay these guys more. But that's not what this conversation is about. This conversation is about strategy and tactics and how to approach these things. Why? The what's happening and the why, the water is, the temperature it is, and the flavor it is. That's what we're trying to talk about. My opinion is fucking pay these guys way more. It's absurd, taking brain damage. But let's remove that. Let's remove that. Pretend we are the UFC or Band-Aid or Kleenex or whatever. We want to protect our thing. We don't want to pay them more. We like the way our business is run. We are getting very wealthy. The business, we can spend insane amounts of money in all different ways. We can try new things. We can grow our business. We're powerful. We want to stay this way. So what do? We control the message. And we have experts at that. Dana's an expert at that. We have entire television programs that people love. Fight shows, pre-shows, post-shows, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. We can program people to see our message our way. So we can say, Kayla Harrison's not actually the best. Well, she actually is kind of, right? Like, this is slightly off topic, but this will help illustrate something. People would be like, yeah, well, I mean, she doesn't want to fight Amanda. She trains with Amanda all the time. They're on the same team. If you go in that room, anybody in that room will tell you Amanda doesn't talk about it and Kayla doesn't talk about it. And the reason they don't talk about it is because that room is tight, respectful. They take care of each other. They built something very special there. From the second they kicked Colby out of that place, and I'm not trying to pick on Colby Covington, but they kicked him out because he caused a lot of shit. They were like, we're going to take care of each other. So we don't talk about this kind of shit. And nobody's telling me this directly. However, if you're in these rooms, around people in these rooms, they'll all tell you Kayla will win some minutes with Amanda and Amanda will win some minutes with Kayla. You won't get them to say that on the record, but everybody fucking knows this, right? Everybody knows this. But since they're not really going to talk about that, we are the UFC. This is our product. We like it the way it is. We can control the message. Let her go make crazy money fighting nobodies. But what starts, here's where little bits of the competition, the strategic competition happens. The PFL is succeeding at their plan. Take some of the best and bring them over here by paying them more, right? Now they have one of the best. Where the places they'll get the best the quickest or more of the best is the women fighters and the heavyweight fighters. The gene pool is smaller. The difference between quality is higher still. And you can become a champion in 2 key fights if you're a woman's 145 pound, 155, 135, doesn't matter, or a heavyweight. 2 big key fights, you can be fighting for a title in any place. So we are now succeeding. So now now for a second, we're the UFC. We have to succeed at what we do. We're not going to bow to their move. So we have to control the message. We have to influence the audience to be on our side. So we have to say, she's not really the best, let her do that. She'd never succeed here. This is where the best fighters are. That's true for the most part. But over time, when there's 8 millionaires being made out of 80 or out of 100 or whatever, or 10, 6 winners, and Rory, Pettis, and a couple other ones. I'm sure Clarissa Shields probably makes $400,000 a fight, and she lost her second fight. And we're going to draw other ones in those divisions now. Julia Budd, come on over. UFC probably made her an offer, and PFL said, you are one of the 10 best fighters in the world, maybe the top 5, maybe the top, we'll pay you more. So she goes. Now you have one of the top 5 there. You have Kayla, one of the top 3 over there. Now you have, and at heavyweight, you'll be able to do the same thing. This starts to happen. But we don't want that to happen because we're the big guys now. So we have to control the narrative. We have to change. We have to convince people, and we can do that. We have a lot of TV. We have hours and hours and hours of influence. Fucking 1,000 people will watch this, right? Dana can fart on Instagram and then say, by the way, everyone at PFL sucks and they're paying too much and this is how this business is run. And he can get, 200,000 people can say that and 20,000 of them will just repeat it because we live in a world where people really feel comfortable just kind of being told what to think. So that's good. Now we, the UFC, can kind of defend that movement. We're not just going to surrender and, okay, shit, now we got to pay everyone $1 million. No, we'll do that. Also, they're not just sitting around. They're the biggest, the best, the smartest. They're not just sitting around going, oh, somebody got a strategy. I guess we're fucked. They need a strategy. They will create strategies to counteract strategies. And one of theirs is, you know what? If people are going to pay like crazy, well, let's get more. We'll get more fighters. We'll tie them all up. There's also my friend Darren Owen has a league that's coming over in the next year or two that with independently owned city-based fighters that are paid like hundreds of thousands of dollars per fight. So this is happening. This is where people will try to attack the biggest, most successful thing where they're weak, which is they're paying the fighters very low. That's part of their success, part of their strength. There's also a weakness because other people are like, we'll take these fighters then. We'll give them $1 million. Oh, you made $80,000 to fight there? Fight here for 200, 300, Meanwhile, the UFC, on the other hand, is like, okay, well, if we're not going to play this, we're going to use strong messaging to maintain, even if we lose a few of the best, and over time, with enough money, we lose a lot of the best. We'll drill the message. This is where the best are, and a lot of people will just buy it, right? A lot of kids don't fucking think. Right? It's not their fault. They've got their busy lives. They have all kinds of shit going on. They have time to think about all this kind of stuff. Somebody they like tells them this is the best. They'll just buy it, right? And so we can keep that message strong, even as we lose some. And in the meantime, get as many fighters here as possible. So every week to do this contender series. Why? Contender series has the lowest contracts possible. So 5 this week, 3 last week, 2 the week before, 2 more next week. We'll do, I don't know, how many weeks do we do? 11, let's say 10, and we average 3. So we sign 30 fighters, every single one of them 10 grand a fight, 10 to show and 10 to win. That same fighter, if they went to the PFL as an unknown 5-0, they might get 25 and 25. But here it's the UFC messaging. It's powerful messaging. Convince the fighters this is better for them. Convince the audience the fighters don't deserve more. Tell a story, keep the story going, and that will help defend against these invaders trying to take chunks of our business. Right? Nobody's mad at any of this. This is all reasonable. Don't be mad. Oh, Dana's not fucking not paying the fighters. PFL's wasting money. This is just life, right? This is just life. This is how they do it. Like this understand these things and try to do it as judgment free as possible. Then you start to understand the world more. Then when you see this pattern repeated, when you have a small company that designs, platforms for something, and you see a larger company, you see how they move, and then these strategic things that take place in normal actions of business, very normal actions of business. Don't be mad because you're being sold a narrative about politics or science or sport or entertainment. None of that. Don't be mad at that. That's just those people, that is businesses using the tools that are at their disposal. One of the biggest tools right now is most of us really have settled comfortably into being told what to believe. And I'm not trying to be provocative here, but we have. And if you think everybody else has and they don't know it, you're in there too. When you're like, how can these people believe this about masks or bad masks or no masks or good vaccines or bad vaccines, or you're in it. If you think they're crazy because they've been programmed, no one who hadn't been programmed would care that those guys have been programmed. I'm not trying to provoke anybody here. I'm not trying to make anybody angry. I'm not trying to accuse anybody of anything. But the key element is, if I'm like, the PFL's the best, the UFC's the best, I only like Bellator, fuck these guys. And sometimes it's so natural to say, fuck these guys, if fucking somebody you work with or in a business you're in somehow creates tension in your life or pressure, of course you're human, right? But the way to understand the water that you're in, the flavor of it, the temperature of it, the texture of it, is to look at it without worrying about it or prejudging it. The UFC is doing exactly what a big this is all just fucking natural capitalist behavior. I have a big business and I worked hard to build this thing. The key to this business is I got to pay fighters as little as humanly possible. That's a key to my business, and I want to keep it. And these fighters are like, hey, wait a second. I fucking get kicked in the head for a living. You built a business that pays me the least. I don't like it. If I'm the UFC, I'd be like, okay, fight somewhere else. And then if I'm people like the PFL, I'd be like, hey, wait a second. There's a whole world of fighters here who would fight somewhere else if you paid them more. Let's borrow a lot of money and pay them more. And this is all natural capitalist free market behavior, normal free market behavior. Maybe it'll work. Probably, potentially it will not, right? Because other changes happen. And again, you can't just, read The Art of War and come up, oh, I think I know how to take a percentage of Airbnb or, whatever, like beef jerky company, or I can take a piece of the UFC, because the UFC is fucking just as smart. They have their own business. They have their own strategies. They have their own tactics that they'll do to protect what they worked hard to earn. Now, where you get a little bit bias, or we may get biased, would be, yeah, but part of what they worked hard to earn was on the backs of these fighters. They should give them money, and more money. And we may believe that. That is a part of how we see the world, our sense of fairness and stuff. And that is how I see the world. I have a sense of fairness where I'm like, why can't you just fucking pay these guys more? But that's not how business works. Business works when something affects it. There's something that influences. Will the PFL last long enough and make enough millionaires that if some other fighter's like, wait a second, you want me to fight for $5 grand? That's what I'm told. I don't know if it's true. Could be 6, 5 and 5 on a contender series that nobody's watching, and not nobody. It's still probably far more watched than 2 or 3 of the 4 shows I commentate. Like, I don't know numbers. Again, I'm not trying to push statistics. I don't know them. So it could actually be, but by comparison, it's not watched that much. So you want me to fight, get kicked in the head for $5,000 or $6,000. Not a lot of people are going to watch comparatively to, say, a UFC pay-per-view. And if I win, and you want me, have signed a contract that says I get paid $10,000 per fight, and you got me for 5 fights, 7 fights, whatever it is. Of course, UFC wants to have as many of these as possible. Again, if you did 10 episodes and you average 2 to 3 a week, you got 30 fighters under the lowest contract in the whole thing that you own the most control over. More of that. Do more of that. That's how the business model works. Again, if you are a competitor, you look at it and say, well, that's a weakness. It's a strength because it's making them rich, but it's a competitive weakness that we believe we can use. And so you come along and you say, $1 million for the winner of every division, and you see what you can get. And again, that's where all of the different forces start to play. All of the different strategic and tactical things start to come into play. You say, we're going to make $6 million. Everyone's going to freak out. All the fighters are going to come over. Well, not so fast. These guys didn't fucking wake up yesterday. They're going to control the narrative. They're going to mobilize the audience. They'll create a perfect talking points that will say, yeah, but that's not real. But, who's that guy fighting? You just have to be careful about these talking points. Because when you say, yeah, but I mean, they're not even fighting the best. Who are they fighting? Like, not even top 40 people. Wait, you can win $1 million? You're going to tell I can win $1 million and fight like number 63 in the world, but I got to go over there and to fight a top 10, I might only make 30,000. And that's one of the 10 best in the world. And you just made that sound even better. Right. And at one point, and again, promoters, don't judge promoters for using language, for using hype, storytelling, narratives, sound bites. This is what they do. They're experts. This is a skill. They develop these skills that they are able to storytell these things. But so at one point, and this is where I was just like, okay, this is a really weird 2-day period. And that's why the original, piece of writing that I put out on a tweet that thousands of people are still interacting with on my Instagram as a quote of it. It was like, the other night, they signed 5 guys to 10,000, and tonight they're going to make 5 people millionaires. Those two things are not super competitive. However, the UFC has to be very careful. Not they don't have to. You can influence, and we can change the narrative as we go. But one thing that I would think about if this was my business and I was running it this way is when I say, and Dana said this the other day, and when he says something, that's like the UFC is saying it, I think, to most people, whether that's true or not. That's how most people see it. And he was like, the Contender series is like the second best library or footage ever. Okay, if you're going to say that now, you're like, well, wait a second. You just got something better than these guys, but these guys get 10 grand and these guys get $1 million. You just told me it's better. So you just told me you just got something better, and they're getting $1 million for something not as good. Well, that doesn't seem right. So the message is it's a tricky game when messaging becomes part of your strategy and tactics, right? It starts to become a little messy. And again, same thing. It's like, you can fight over there and fight cans and make crazy money. You can make that sound bad if you want, but if I'm a fighter, I'm like, wait a second. I can fight like the number 63 in the world in my weight class, according to who? And if I win 2 of those, then I'm in a turn. I can $1 million. I can 6 months. Fucking sign me up. Or I could get $5 grand to get kicked in the head on a digital streaming show, and if I win, I get the gift of being able to sign a very, very prohibitive, very low level entry contract. I think I'm going to go over there. And so as that starts to happen, inevitably, maybe right now there's only 2, 3, 4 of the best, fighters, top 10 in any division over there. I mean, you can argue Ray Cooper, Ray Cooper would get killed over there. Really? Because then he's a genius because he just made $2 million in like 14 months. He's brilliant. That's where we should go. Right. So it's a very tricky thing, but this will change many times over too. Like, I don't know there are always projections, right? Like we're like, okay, we're going to spend $6 million in 2020. Actually, I think they were shut down that year. I forget. COVID, whatever. We're going to spend $6 million and then lose a couple other million, but we need this kind of growth and we need to sign this kind of names. And then if that happens, the next year we'll get even bigger. But you don't anticipate changes in how communication happens, changes in how the audience sees things, changes in how the big, strong one can influence the thinking and the behavior of the audience. If you don't think you're influenced by sports, news, I mean, if you're ever yelling at your Facebook or yelling at your TV, you are currently being influenced by whatever you're watching. Like, you'd be like, fuck Jake Paul. I mean, just how do we make this guy not famous? Well, you're really interacting with him, right? Like, so all of these kinds of things are all in play, and there's no need to be mad at it. If you are, it's all just part of it, you know? And you realize this after a little while. You realize it's like, okay, I can freak out about the things that do and don't work for me, but that will be to my detriment. What the logical way to live your life, whether you work in the fight game, which is what we're looking at today, or you work in the government, or you work in any other thing, to identify these truths and then you accept that they're true, and then figure out how to survive, thrive, or positively experience, or positively change, or find meaning in the reality, right? So if you were today a 29-year-old fighter who was 11-2, and you had one fight in the UFC a while back, but then you lost twice, but now you're way better than you've ever been. But over there, I can win $1 million. Over here, they want to tell me, you know, you will make your choices. But if you're a 22-year-old kid who's told everyone in your family one day you're going to fight in the UFC, and the way, and you know, that I'm going to be a star, and this is what I'm going to do, and I was born for this, and that's now your narrative. And you got to fight for $5,000 or $6,000 on a streaming show to then be signed to a very difficult contract. You do it. You do it. And we all do what's best for us. We all do what's best for us. That's all anybody's doing here. You know, and what's best for the individual, and what's best for the machine and the corporation, the audience. It's all often in conflict. And the easiest way to make it less in conflict is control the message, control the narrative, make the audience think how you want them to think. So if we leave this, I don't know if I made sense of some of this or any of this. I will definitely take 4 or 5 questions. So please, in whatever platform you're watching this on, please just go ahead and send them, and I'll take 4 or 5 questions. I don't know if I made sense of this, but you see the basic strategy: identify weakness, see if you can use it to somehow gain, you know, talent or audience or market share or bandwidth or whatever, and use that to go. And then the other one resists that, and through messaging and through whatever other tools and tactics they have. This is business, right? This is business. This is also fighting. This is also game theory. Game theory is not video games or board games. Game theory is in theory any way that humans are interacting in some way that is either counterproductive or competitive or non-competitive. And game theory looks at this, and game theory is a part of business, fighting, all of these things, right? So this is all just the world. This is all just the world. The less angry we get at Trump or Biden, the UFC or Bellator or PFL or whoever, Jake Paul or you know, Master P, it doesn't matter. The less, you know, Jay-Z, the less angry we get at these things, and the more we accept their reality and then try to figure out how to work comfortably and with your own ethics and belief systems within it. This was a big part. So, you know, I don't know where the future will hold, but currently I make a substantially comfortable amount of money for somebody who spends as little as I do to talk like this. Sometimes I'll talk here, sometimes I'll make little breakdowns, sometimes I'll, you know, analyze stuff on Instagram. A big part of this making sense for me and finding comfort and a bit of serenity and a little bit of happiness and a little bit of contentment and like being able to follow my curiosity, my creativity, was this very thing I'm telling you about. Look at what the reality of the thing is, and then figure out how that you can live within that thing, positively affecting it or influencing it or being kind to people, whatever your goals are, your real life goals are. Mine is to be curious. Mine is to do things my own way. Mine is to push the envelope creatively. Mine is to attempt to innovate even when I fail. Mine is to have my hair whatever stupid way I want to have my hair. And mine is to hang out with my wife and, you know, my baby who will be born in a few months, and still get to do this and sit next to cages and rings and analyze and commentate fighting, which was a dream of mine. And the way that came together wasn't by being like, I think the UFC should do this thing, and I think if I should get this job, and that, who's that guy and how do I convince him to, like, That's not the way. And for some people it is. For some people they'll be like, hey, my strategy would be to work for Coca-Cola in whatever. So I got to figure out who's the head of Coca-Cola and figure out what he likes and find a way to get in front of him and convince him and then do what he tells me and develop a rapport with him so that I'll be one of his favorites. That's how you that is one way to succeed within structures like this. Another way is step way the fuck back and learn all the information that's happening. Oh, I mean, corporations are not good or evil. They're just whatever they are. They exist to make money. Okay. So, and they exist to continue to grow, right? And it's something called finite game versus an infinite game, right? The UFC, Bellator, your business, Instagram, my business of creating breakdowns, your relationships, you being a father. You have to live these things like an infinite game. A finite game is like a fight. There's 3 rounds, 5 minutes in a cage. We have rules at the end. If we strategize this finite game right, at the end we will win. With the win, we'll have a prize. We'll then plan the next finite game. But your career, your life, is an infinite game. As long you will die, but you have to live it like it's an infinite game because it will only end at your death, and you can't control that. And you can control your health to some degree. You can influence your health, but when you die, your infinite game will end. So in the meantime, like, how do I get hired for this thing? Well, that thing's kept constantly changing. I'll use an example: ESPN. When the UFC or any other company, and we can say the same about CNN, Fox News. It doesn't matter. When you one day want to be on ESPN, or you got to get onto Fox, whatever, or whatever your goal is. One day you will get that, but it won't be the thing it was when you dreamed of it. It will change. ESPN doesn't have the CNN, the Fox News, any of them, NBC, doesn't matter. They don't have the influence they once had. So if your dream was one day to earn the right to be on NBC, well, now you are, because it's smaller and it doesn't mean as much, right? The world is constantly changing. It's an infinite, you have to live it like an infinite game. How do I improve? What do I learn? How is this going to change as the world changes? The world is constantly changing. You must be able to either respond well to it, or better yet, anticipate it somewhat accurately, without too much expectation or predictive behavior on what you think it will be in ways that trap you. That's how you do it. So one day I'm sitting there going, okay, Fight Network shut our entire department. What do I do? Well, I got 8,000 followers on Instagram. You start to look at, okay, that's going to be bigger. A lot of the people that are doing the jobs that I want haven't necessarily even, I've commentated literally 500 shows at that point. Haven't done what I've done, but they have 200,000 Instagram followers. Fuck, I have to do that. Well, what if I could do it in a way that I enjoy, brings value to my audience, and makes me better every day? Okay, I figured that out. This is the infinite game thinking. Now, as you grew that thing, it wasn't about growing Instagram, because Instagram doesn't mean what it meant when I lost my job, when Fight Network shut down our entire department. But the act of doing it made me better. Doing 14, 15, 1,600 breakdowns has now shaped me into, I now commentate differently than everybody because they didn't do the work I did. That's not better or worse, just different. And different's good. Now I can, and this is infinite game thinking. The UFC has an infinite game. At one point, they may have to change dramatically. But in the meantime, it's like we like paying 18% to the fighters. We are ultra profitable. We can spend more, and it's not that dissimilar. Let me take Red Bull, for example. I don't know how much a can of Red Bull costs. Let's say the retail is typically $2.99. There's probably 3 cents of sugar water in that thing. Why do we keep that cost low? So we can use the rest to just keep growing, sell, market, create sports, do whatever. This is better for us. We could spend 10 or 15 or 20 cents on the sauce, but that's not as good for us. Let's just get the sauce as easy as possible and then spend the rest to keep. Tate said, please upload this to YouTube. I think it's streaming on YouTube right now. So it will go to YouTube probably immediately. Thanks to everybody who hangs out and watches my shit. Oh yeah, so we were going to take questions. Hey Robin, Arturo here. Question: are rule sets essential for martial art learning, or are they a product of circumstance? Ooh, man. That's excellent. So no, any parameters will direct your learning, but it's not essential for learning. Learning can happen entirely in a state of innovative play. right? You can go out, humans with nothing, literally, if you were alone and you had a giant yard and you were trapped, you were, in jail or some scenario in which you were not able to go anywhere, and you wanted to be a martial artist, you would become one alone. You don't need anything. You experiment to play. Now, of course, that speed will increase if you have experts who have developed expertise, if you have elders and mentors who can help to show you, hey, if you do 1,000 of those, that will make you better in this way. So it all helps. And parameters, shorter rounds, longer rounds, rule sets, no kicking, only kicking, all of these things will shape you. So it's both. That is such a great question. But yes, Tate, thank you. I will. This is on YouTube. I'll put some tags on it. Please share it. I hope this was useful, and I hope I'm really, really, really the direction of my own. I'm happiest when I'm trying to think. Somebody said they're the 14th like, which I believe is only on one platform somewhere. I don't know where, because I'm currently on, I think, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. But hey, Robin, I try to make all your live feeds. I really like to listen to you and your pals give masterclass seminars for free. Love. So Rich Chow and Mallory Woods, two of my buddies, we hang out, and we once a week, and we get together and we just talk strictly about martial arts. This was strategy. This was things from studying combat that we can apply to our business lives, or strategy about anything in life, right? But yeah, when I hang out with those guys, it's a wonderful time. Do you think a combat jiu-jitsu or karate champion will ever be an MMA champion? No, because I don't think there's a jiu-jitsu champion that's an MMA champion today. I don't think there's a kickboxing champion. I don't think there's a boxing champion. Even if they once were any of those things, by the fact of competing and training in this one area, they become something different. So a former combat jiu-jitsu or combat karate champion who later continued to evolve as a free-form martial artist, sure, yeah, of course. Some really, really nice comments from people. Anyone have any questions about this sort of taking combat strategy, taking military strategy, and applying it to your business? This applies to all of us. It applies this type of thinking where you can gather information, resist the need to have an opinion as long as possible. So your opinions trap you, right? If you right away is like, this horseshit, UFC is like, the pay is, if you don't like it, go south. If you start to parrot narratives, you lose the ability to sift through this stuff. If you're like, PFL's way better, man, they're paying $1 million, like, fuck Dana. You do that, trapped. You're not gonna be able to see the whole picture. Rarely, and this includes, again, I don't like to even get into this area, but I would go as far as saying Biden and Trump. Rarely is one side a genius and the other side a fucking raving lunatic. Yes, I know that, as I've said that, if you strongly believe in either one side, you currently think the other one's a raving lunatic, or this one's senile, or that one's a sociopath, or whatever. But rarely is that actually the case. Rarely is it the case that these guys are terrible, evil, and these guys are awesome. Everybody's often motivated by good, and we kind of saw that with Clarissa Shields. Yeah, Clarissa Shields, that's a tough one, because I love how strong she was when she speaks. Like, I love a confident woman. I love a confident person. I love a confident athlete. But now she's just gonna have to deal with, and this is part of what is the modern thing you deal with. Thousands of people who will accomplish, many of which will not accomplish dangerous or challenging or things that involve a lot of risk, will just mock her openly. And partly it's because by seeing her fail is a reminder. It makes them feel correct that you're better to not take risks, or people like them will make fun of you. It's a tough one to watch, but is chi and aura the same thing? No, it is not. But I'm right now and down for Love of Martial Arts this Tuesday. That's a great. Is chi? They are not. I will. It's a great question. The same thing. We're gonna get into. That's a fucking great question. I'm gonna write it down. We're gonna get into the idea of sort of chi, essence, aura, etc. I'll bring in my friend Rob from McDojo Life, because he will have strong beliefs on what things aren't. And Rob and I are good friends, and I like him very much. Rob from McDojo Life, if anyone linked you to this, I'll be texting you in the next day or so. Because, yeah, Rob has a strong, factual, scientific belief about certain things, and there is still always things beyond what we know. But then there's always horse shit too. And so I see horse shit as horse shit, just like Rob does. But there's a little gray area sometimes where I'm like, actually, there's a little more happening here than we see. And I'll tell you off topic, I realize, but I'll tell you, when I went to China, I went to Russia and China. One, I did the World Wushu Championships for like maybe 8 or 10 days, and won the World Kung Fu Championships. So I was immersed in Chinese martial arts, the philosophies, ways of thinking, and you realize over time, as you study science deeply enough, certain things start to actually have a scientific explanation. For example, some people will say they are able to see the movement before it begins. Uh, of course, that sounds ridiculous, but people see the fastball before it's left the hand, right? They see it, they feel it. There is a way to train that your body recognizes patterns and movements in such a way that without you thinking about it, you are able to respond. The fastball hitter is the easiest explanation to use, because we all see that happens, right? We see a fastball hitter hits a fastball. We've seen the slow motion before it's left his hand. He knows where it's going. That same concept can exist with punches and kicks, right? Thanks, my friend. So anyways, real fun hang today. Really, really cool hang, and I've enjoyed it immensely. It was good for my mind, and I'm really grateful for the people that come in and hang out and leave comments and stuff. It's a really kind thing, and it's a really nice thing to have in your life, the ability to like chat and like to like allow ideas, some good, some bad, some these are important, valuable things. A lot of people write, they write because that allows them to a little bit of a brain dump and to sift through their own way of thinking. I get to do that here, which is really cool. Michael J. White are legitimate martial arts or a tough guy on the camera. See, I don't know enough about him specifically, but martial artists are martial artists. How much you fight and whether you fight does not make a martial artist, but fighting is an aspect of martial arts. There are many great teachers who are great martial artists who don't fight much and haven't fought much. Fighting is a part of being a martial artist. That's why I fought. I had 9 pro fights, and I fought plenty of. I medaled in the Pan Am Games in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, was a blue belt, and I got to, because to me it's really important. I have to know the truth. The truth is only available within the experience, and I know that for a fact because I've been inexperienced and experienced, and then more experienced, and then explored the inexperience again, right? Like, so you know this, you learn this, and but there are great martial artists who do not fight much. But the blend between what we understand and the other, yeah, that is what we're going to talk about. I'll text Rob from McDojo Life after this. How does your musician's blend apply to your martial arts learning? A lot. Another good question. I'm going to to martial arts a lot, but I'm going to tell you about it as to sort of my art that I do now, what I consider an art. I try to enrich the experience when somebody watches a fight. As a live commentator, which I do a lot, I got Amsterdam at Levels Fight League in a couple of weeks, and I'm going to Paris, commentate Ares fighting, Ares. I did for them before. Wonder Fernand Lopez putting it together. Love Fernand. Then I'm going back for Game Bread, and so I'm doing some types of MMA, bare knuckle MMA, bare knuckle boxing, lots of different things. But so to do it on a different level, because most people start to, their brains almost are programmed, oh, big right hand, oh, crazy left hook, boom, it's all over, wow, right? Why do you hear wow from 1 or 2 of commentators on almost every knockout? They're programmed. They don't realize it, but they've seen it enough times that it happens. For me, I was like, okay, wait, how do I get around that? I don't want to just automatically default to what I heard geniuses like Joe Rogan, just because he's brilliant doing it his way doesn't mean I should do it his way. That makes no sense. Me imitating an individual is, therefore, I'm not an individual. I'm an imitator, right? And yet that's the bulk of how commentary kind of takes place now, is it's sort of been written, and you just say, big right hand, striker versus grappler, great takedown defense, whatever, and you phrase it in the way that others have phrased it. And so I was like, how can I avoid that thing? And I started to study a freestyle rap. is the mechanics of freestyle rap? What is truly the innovative and artistic and creative aspects of freestyle rap? How does the brain work in this? How do you prepare for that? How do you practice that? So the study of and jazz improvisation, the study of jazz improvisation and freestyle rap informed my ability to commentate different, and it allowed me to flow and freestyle it using the knowledge that I have, which is how great freestylers do. Is you fill your brain with as much different perspectives of the same ideas in different ways, in different phrasing, in different cadences, and different ideas, and different flavors, and different colors, and different textures, the biological and the psychological and the emotional and the tactical and the kinesthetic and all these things. And I was able to do that by making 1,500 breakdowns. By making 1,500 breakdowns, I explored these things in a meaningful way, then allowed that to exist in the soup of my consciousness, and then studied the mechanics of how to freestyle rap, which is not to say the things that are train yourself to say. And now all of a sudden, music helped me become an individual commentator instead of most of them are similar. And I don't mean that in a rude way. That is fairly, I think we could probably agree if we watch, wow, oh my God, boom, oh, he's crazy. Wow, he's got to keep his head off that center line. And, he's going to look for transitions here. And, there's only 50. Oh, I can't take too many of those leg kicks. Those really start adding up in the later rounds. Like, how do you not say those things? Well, it's work. It's work. Michael Jai White. Yes, right. Many thanks. You're very welcome. Yes, we definitely had we put a J. He benches 350. Okay, well, that's legit. It doesn't make you a fighter, but it 355 just went up. Sounds like you treat commentary like a concert, like a musician. You feed off the performers, fighters, and the audience. That's amazing, Robin. Thanks for the insight. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the goal isn't just to say the things that everybody says during the things that happen. Big right hand, huge left hook, crazy combination. Oh my God, it's all over. Wow, like that's, to me, that's death. That's death. Like, that's death. So what is happening? Well, we don't have any of those things hip pocket ready to go, phrased out in a particular way. There's certain things I say again and again because they've become part of my own consciousness or my own way of thinking. But yeah, there's a fight happening here. We should be able to be a part of it in a way that enriches the experience, not just say the things during the familiar things so that we feel like it's a Barney the dinosaur. That's that, that's that. It's a nice teep, great low kick. Oh, we checked it. Like those, that's also the job of the other guy, typically. Thanks, man. Yeah, Game Bread's a really fun one to do. Anyways, I stayed for a long time. I've been here an hour longer, which is longer than I was intending. But I hope these were good. If anyone enjoyed this, if you're still hanging in watching, please feel free to clip whatever you want. If you send it to me or whatever, I'll share it and I'll link you. Sometimes it's cool to find little neat clips, but also I say crazy shit. So if you take it out of context or you use only the crazy thing, it'll sound like I'm crazy all the time. And maybe I am. I don't know. Trying to not be boxed and not think linearly. Maybe that's a sign of craziness today. I don't know. But that's okay. I'm happy and life is good and I'm grateful. Thanks everybody for hanging out. Please join me, Rich, and Mal. I believe next Tuesday, and we will dig into some of these things. I wrote down a few good things. Thanks, everybody. Recommend this to your friends if you like. And I'm at Robin Black Martial Arts on Instagram. I got like 1,500 breakdowns there. If you want a t-shirt, my wife helps me ship them. She's good at shipping stuff. Bink or enjoy the hostilities at shoprobinblack.com. And I'm Robin Black Bink on TikTok. Although who's on TikTok? I don't know. A lot of people though. Not a lot of people I know, but a lot of people. Okay, let's take a couple more. Thank you. Who is the biggest threat of hot lava? Hot lava is an old school term that I used to use, which was you stay off the mat because you get burned. It was a game when you're kids. You would have to jump from the furniture and the ground was hot lava. And if you touched it, you would die. But I don't know if any of those guys jump to mind. Thanks again. Thanks, everybody. Okay, I'm out. Really enjoyed this and I'm grateful. Blackout.